I'm what's called a specialist inspector, so within HSE. So, but my specialism is occupational hygiene, and part of that is asbestos. So I'm actually what they call the, well, I made this job title up for myself actually, the technical and strategic lead, which basically means I provide a lot of technical advice to all areas of HSE. So whether it's policy people, whether it's inspectors that are out on site inspecting licence removal jobs. I support a lot of the inspection campaigns. I'm going to be talking about the Duty to Manage in Schools campaign, but I also seem to be doing most of the stakeholder engagement work, which I really love, which is why I'm here today. So hopefully I try and link everyone together. That's how I sort of see myself. So yeah, that's me. And just a general thanks. I know Colette sits on a lot of the working groups, some of which I'll be talking about today. But I know sometimes I'll have a request for feedback from NORAC, and a lot of you do feedback via Colette. So that's just a general thanks for that. And I suppose whilst I'm on that topic, there's a few things I won't be talking about in terms of the update, mainly because I don't know what the updates are. But I think Rachel, you're talking about the 2 points NAD thing. I withdrew myself from that because I've got so much to do. So I haven't got any update on that. So you'll be the ones that will know more than me on that one. And also, but this is something I think that is important, the Work and Pension Select Committee recommendations that talked about the survey, mandatory surveying, mandatory UCAS accreditation for surveyors, and also the client-appointed analysts for 4-stage clearance. Now, a lot of work's being done, sort of doing some work to look at those 2 recommendations. I can't tell you what that is, but it will very much be, certainly in the next couple of months, that will be advertised, and it may be an opportunity, Colette, to come to the NORAC members to ask for some feedback or some contribution into that work. But that's the extent of the update on that, as it were. But hopefully there's some stuff I can talk to you about because there's lots going on. So I'm going to talk about the Management in Schools report, which was published, I think, at the end of June this year. A little bit about the Duty to Manage campaign update. This is HSE's Duty to Manage campaign. A little bit about HSE's research reports. There's a couple of research reports that are going to be published, hopefully by the end of this year, which will be relevant to members. And finally, the work of the Asbestos Network. I think Colette's already mentioned some of that. And I'm going to seamlessly, Graham, move into your presentation, which I think is talking about one of the appendices which we've done. Okay, so I just need to check my. Can you just tell me if I go on? I have a habit of going on too much. So just raise your hand if it's like 5 minutes or something. So the schools report. So hopefully. Has everyone seen and read this? Because I have sort of assumed that you have. But if you haven't, it's only like about 20 pages, and it's quite a large font. Got quite a lot of diagrams and stuff in it. It's available at that web address. If you just put in a search engine, HSE Management of Asbestos in Schools report, you should find the link. So, but that's what the report looks like. What I wanted to do today, though, and this is sort of, I guess, just sort of cover what the inspections last year covered. So basically, last year we went, or October to March this year, we went and inspected a sample of 400 primary and secondary schools. In the end, it tended to be 421 schools. All of these were known to contain asbestos. We were given the names from the Department of Education. They were selected on the basis that they did have asbestos in buildings, otherwise it would be a waste of time us turning up. It was a single issue inspection, so inspectors just went in and just looked at asbestos unless there was something like someone working on a roof that was unprotected, that they would raise that. So it's very much just focusing on the duty to manage at that school. And visits were made by appointment. We have to make them by appointment because you need to get the right people there. If you're not talking to the right people, you're not going to get the right information. So some people say, oh, if you go by appointment, you don't see the worst stuff. Most of our visits, we do just turn up on sites, but things like this, where we're looking at management arrangements, we need paperwork, we need the right people. So that's why they were made by appointment. We used this time. This is very, very different to last time we ever looked at duty to manage, but we produced, and this is where we produced what's called a digital recording form. And I was very much involved in this because I wanted to really, people always focus on numbers of improvement notices, numbers of prohibition notices, numbers. But with something like this, a management inspection, or you've broken the regulation Reg 4, but how and why? And unless we know why you did that, we're not going to be able to make any further improvements or find out where the issues are. So this was very much looking behind the numbers. So, and this is really what I'm going to be sort of looking at, and hopefully the report that was produced, you know, it does have all the headline figures in it, but really what we're interested in, or what I'm interested in, I think what you probably are interested in too, is how you can help clients, if you've got clients that are schools, improve on those areas. Okay. And that's what we looked at. We looked at the data to analyse for compliance trends, which I'm going to show you in a minute. And this really, yeah, as I said, will enable more specific and targeted guidance and communications for stakeholders. And also when inspectors go out this time, they will have looked at the report, so they can maybe target certain things that we found during the last inspections. So I'm just going to have a look at some compliance trends. Hopefully, do apologise if you can't see these. But I'm going to cover the 5 areas which the sort of the recording form was divided up into. I'm not going to sort of go through every single one in a lot of detail. I just want to pick out a few things. But the gist of this illustration really is areas where we had most compliance. So most schools and those that were compliant would have a lot of those things right. And these things were things that were less compliant. So these things weren't always right at school. So that's basically, it's quite sort of numeric. It's just sort of a snapshot. So it's probably, I probably want to focus on this bit, I think, really, because this, I think, is where the improvement can happen. So not all the time were they clear and user focused, and not all the time they had photos. And we did get a little bit of, the report actually was produced for the Department of Education. And we did get a little bit of sort of feedback from them saying, well, where does it say in the regulation you have to have a photo? So I'm sort of saying, well, no, it doesn't say it in the regulation. It does mention photos in HSE 264. But really, this is about when you're looking at management of a risk, when you're looking at asbestos, I'm sure you will all agree, you need to be able to see and understand where the asbestos is. And if you're inspecting it year on year, what it looks like. And photos can be a brilliant way of being able to do that. So it's really about perhaps coming away from this sort of checklist of compliance. You've done that, you've done that, you've done that, you've done that, but really looking at it, taking a step back. Is this actually working in terms of management? And if you've got clear paperwork, clear sort of asbestos registers, management plans, and everyone knows about them that needs to know about them, you know, you're halfway there. So so these are some of the things which were put up with. Areas not inspected, that's the other area. That's it. The asbestos registers, they sound like it should be a register of where the asbestos is. So that's fine. Obviously, that's easy. But if you've got areas that weren't inspected for whatever reason, you know, we won't go down the reasons why they should have been inspected during the original survey, but there may be some genuine reasons why they weren't inspected, and also those that were perhaps non-genuine. But those areas must be presumed to contain asbestos, so they also need to be included in the asbestos register. And that was one aspect that wasn't particularly well complied with. And the site plan should also show those areas, because again, we know that a lot of people, when they're on site and what materials or documents they use to check if an area's got asbestos, sometimes it will just be the site plan. You know, if they do have to cross-reference, then that should be made very clear. You know, don't just rely on the site plan. But if you are relying on the site plan, that also has to convey all that information. And then the final thing is this issue about actions. So in the asbestos register, I think it depends. I saw quite a lot of asbestos registers because a lot of the inspectors would give me all the documents that they had seen. I did some site visits, and you know, I remember going to a school in Bristol. They had an asbestos register. It was in font 8, so that they can pack all the priority and material scores into the table. And it's like, I can't even read this. So again, that's not clear. But the important thing that asbestos registers should have in is this sort of action table, or refer to where the actions are, and the information about what those actions were and whether they were actually completed. And a lot of the time that wasn't the case. So so those were the things that were less compliant for the asbestos registers. Hopefully, maybe you have a few minutes after this, but hopefully these will start to ring true with yourselves. But if you disagree or if you want to add anything, please let me know, because I'm really interested in this. I will be speaking about this at other events. So management plans. Again, there's areas of good compliance here, or the areas that were most compliance. Copy available on site, identifies duty holders. But things that were less well done, were things like specific responsibilities of individuals, the inclusion of deputies or contingency to cover staff absence, like during school holidays when a lot of the building work takes place, incident procedures, and how reviewed or updated at least every 12 months. Not all of those were done that way. So so I think, and the other thing with, asbestos management plans, I'm currently trying to, with our web team, because we're re-looking at all our duty to manage web content. I'm trying to improve asbestos management plans and the information that we can provide about what they look like and how they should actually work. So I have produced something which hopefully is going to be able to be used to try and help improve this. Because one of the things we did get feedback on is that the current sort of asbestos management plan template or example that we've got on our website is not fit for purpose. I think it's designed for very, very small scale. It's not designed for a very complex organisation like a school. So that's fair comment. So we're looking to try and improve some of the guidance on asbestos management plans. Okay, so roles and responsibilities for those that are involved in the management of asbestos at schools. Yeah, not all staff were actually aware of what they were meant to be doing. Ask the question about, do you have an appointed person for asbestos? And I was chatting in the duty to manage duty to manage working group yesterday, and someone made the very good point that an appointed person can be very critical, and we should be trying to improve the knowledge of this role. And this is something which I've sort of personally identified, I think would be a good thing, particularly in complex organisations. But we asked this question because of that. But I do get the feeling, and I don't have any proof of this, but people, if you say an appointed person, does that just mean you're appointed to do asbestos, as opposed to an appointed person as a role? And I do think we really need to sort of try and perhaps identify this as a role, a bit like a Legionella responsible person. Those of you that know about Legionella, that's actually a specific role with detailed sort of responsibilities and training and stuff. So, but again, any feedback on your thoughts on that would be helpful. And making sure that staff, because bear in mind we're restricted here to duty to manage. This is like communicating information about asbestos. Areas of staff with responsibility for communicating that information are aware of areas that weren't surveyed. So this goes back to that point I made earlier about everyone knows where it is, but they perhaps aren't aware of the areas that haven't been inspected, so must be presumed. So that sort of links that. And appropriate training as well. So again, this is something which I think I've recognised and I've discussed in other stakeholder forums. You know, we have in the car ACOP, we've got very detailed ACOP on what asbestos awareness training should include, what non-licensed awareness training should include, and what licence training should improve. But there's nothing really that prescriptively says what you need to be trained on or what the syllabus should include if you're an appointed person or if you're a duty holder. So again, I think this is another area which I'm hoping to, and again through work with stakeholders, that we can try and improve that, because if we're sort of a bit uncertain around this area, then that's why we're getting this lack of compliance, I think. And then sort of moving on here, this is training and support for in-house staff. So that's staff that work at the school, and they're actually carrying out maintenance work. So the people, and the maintenance work could also include cleaning, but also those people that sort of head up the maintenance teams for the school, if it's a secondary school, or you're sort of very small caretaker, I guess, in a primary school perhaps. So again, in this case, we're found to have appropriate training. Not all of them actually would be trained to undertake asbestos work, but some of them would be asbestos awareness trained. So all that was in place generally. But the areas where we had less compliance or loose compliance, again, staff not aware of areas not inspected. So again, this is a recurring sort of theme across the various management aspects. Checks to ensure there was a suitable and sufficient risk assessment in place before the work or the routine task was undertaken, and method statement, and also monitor and supervise. There's a few areas there with respect to the training and support. Okay, thank you. And finally, management of contractors. So again, the management of contractors, this is one thing which generally, if you've got contractors coming to do installation work or to do some refurbishment work, all of this stuff needs to happen way before they step over the threshold of the school. And I think sometimes that perhaps isn't fully understood, certainly when we talk to people just generally about contractors arriving on site. So this all does need to be, but we did find that there was good compliance about planning work before. That's good. There wasn't always permit to work systems in place or something similar. Again, that's just a suggestion. It's not necessarily a mandatory requirement. And again, but there wasn't checks to ensure that they're suitably trained or aware areas of surveyed. Now, I think the other thing, yesterday I was, I said I get inquiries from inspectors. And yesterday I had an inquiry which delayed me a little bit. So that's not my excuse why I was late this morning. But it did make me realise that whilst we're focusing on one of the areas about management of contractors is there was this video that had been sent in by someone who'd been working for a contractor, and there was allegedly they were taking down columns within a school that had the AIB lining to them, and they were doing it just as part of a demolition job. And that made me think, well, this is not part of the duty to manage inspections, but it's the next bit that's sort of, if we holistically look at where duty to manage sits, and particularly when we start to look at work on schools or on hospitals, this management of contractors, clearly some things aren't working. So I think that's the other area where, through other aspects of which I've seen from my general work, that we are sort of getting. There've always been issues. I'm not saying that there's never been issues, but this importance that the information about checking the competence of contractors and making people and the clients actually know what they should be checking for. So knowing when they should be saying, well, this needs to be done as license work. You've got this demolition survey here that says remove as a licensed material. Why have you got a demolition contractor on site that's just soft stripping and pretending it's non-licensed work? So there's a clear sort of gap there as well. That's sort of slightly removed a little bit from what in the inspectors doing duty to manage were going to check, because they weren't actually going to drill into any sort of work that was going on. But it's really just to illustrate how there's a lot of sort of offshoots to all this sort of duty to manage Reg 4, and looking at it a bit more sort of holistically from my point of view, at least. So please, I probably won't have time now because I've gone on, but yeah, I'd be interested in your thoughts just generally about that as well. So hopefully most of you were, I think NORAC did promote the Asbestos and You campaign, which was running first 3 months of this year. The reason why I put this up here, because the duty to manage campaign, I think it's still going to be bannered under Asbestos and You, but it will be very much duty to manage orientated. I think there's going to be what they call a soft launch. I sort of sit on all these comms teams, comms meetings now. I'm missing the meeting today about the duty to manage comms stuff, but it's really interesting because I've learned quite a lot about like social media. And one of the things that we said, 5 minutes, one of the things that they said, because I think this might be useful to you guys, is a lot of the hits we got on our website was where you could download something, so download a piece of guidance. So rather than just sort of flash up something, if they can then go and do something like a quiz or something, that was generally, because it's about clicking, isn't it? We all do it, all click, click, click. So little tip there. But yeah, this is going to be the actual Duty to Manage campaign will be launched in January next year, and will run for three months. There's going to be the sort of content's being sort of discussed at the minute, so but that's hopefully going to be good. And I've already mentioned the websites. There's been an audit of all the HSE asbestos websites. I've been sort of involved in some of that. And that's all going to be redesigned to sort of look at user journeys, accessibility issues. So that's something to look for in the future. Brett, can you put the next slide? Oh, sorry. HSE research. There's 3 reports. This one's already out. Use of control measures during licensed asbestos removal, and the effectiveness of 4-stage clearance procedures. Any of you that are going to the FAM conference, I think there's going to be presentations on those. Oops. But I did want to talk about the effectiveness of witness 4-stage clearance procedures. We did find improvements in the way analysts conducted the 4-stage clearance compared to 4 previous studies. But there were a few sort of points that were sort of picked up just generally. This was observed work. So basically they observed a load of workers from start to finish. So something which normally if an HSE inspector went on site, they wouldn't do because they would just focus on certain things and they're not here really to look at the work of the analysts. So this the scientist on site from start to finish for the duration of the job. So it really got quite a lot of interesting information. And they also did comparative air monitoring. So the report's going to be really useful, I think interesting to this audience. But there are a few things. You're going to get these presentations. So these are just sort of summaries of some of the issues that were sort of found. Bear in mind, this was about 5 years ago, so pre-HSG 248, the 2nd edition. So that's just that. I won't go into that. Asbestos Network, this is where I'm going to lead into you, Graham, seamlessly. The Asbestos Network's now got a site via the Cognac. And the Asbestos Network members provides a forum which HSE can work together with relevant parties, so that's NORAC and other stakeholders, to basically try and provide sort of guidance or highlight problems, and that we can sort of share that sort of exchange of information. Asbestos, the Duty to Manage working group, this met yesterday, so NORAC's represented on there, but we've got other sort of member organisations. So that's going to be quite interesting. I think we're going to be discussing the schools report at the next meeting, Alan, because I think you sit on it for NORAC. The technical working group, this is the one I chair. This is for the licence industry, and this is I'm biased actually, but this I think is the best group. Graham's actually going to be talking about something which we produced, which is this personal monitoring, exposure and health record. So I'm very, very proud of that. Very, very proud of everyone that's worked on that, because they all put a lot of effort into that. But we're also looking at things like asbestos skips and waste fan compartments. This is where to really provide a bit more clarification for the industry, for the licence removal industry. Where our guidance, HSG 247 is about 20 years old, so it really does need some sort of improvements in terms of providing a bit of clarification. So this is the means by which we do it. And this one here, I literally got a draft copy, you'll be pleased to know, Colette, about this. This is about providing a bit more information to site supervisors on the standards of visual inspections. So that's just really to let you know the sort of work that we're doing with HSE, and NORAC is obviously a very important part of that.